Welcome to SoundBite, a low-carb, high-protein, bite-sized portion of that which makes America.
Your hosts for this morsel of Americana are Christy and I
and Laura Bynum.
We've already talked about the executive branch that's comprised of, amongst other things, the president, vice president, and the 14 departments that handle everything from Veterans Affairs to commerce. We've also talked about the legislative branch, comprised of the Senate and House of Representatives. Today we're going to very briefly tackle the judicial branch, and mostly the Supreme Court.
As the guardians of our Constitution, members of this branch make decisions on a daily basis that reinforce, interpret, enforce, or in some cases completely relinquish the freedoms and/or the language of the Constitution. The Judiciary Act of 1789 established the Supreme Court and the two levels of federal courts beneath it, the trial courts and the appellate courts. Congress is given the power to create federal courts. They get to decide how many courts there should be, where they should be, how many judges will serve in each courtroom, and funds appropriated for the development and its functioning. All federal judges are asked to abide by a code of conduct that states, amongst other things, that they will uphold the integrity and independence of the judiciary, avoid impropriety, perform their duties with impartiality, and refrain from all political activity. Most cases heard today are heard by state courts. Cases are moved up into the federal judiciary when a question arises as to the federal constitutionality of a case, if there are questions raised about governmental functioning, if controversies arise between states' laws, or if questions about litigants from foreign countries are involved.
All judges appointed to the Supreme Court, the granddaddy of all other courts, are nominated by the President and appointed by the Senate. The headmaster of the Supreme Court justices, and we use this term because to date there has never been a headmistress, is currently Chief Justice William Rehnquist, who was appointed during President Reagan's administration. Interesting things to note about the position is that they do have duties other than those outlined for the Supreme Court. They are the third in line to greet visiting foreign dignitaries after the President and Vice President, and they serve as Chancellor for the Smithsonian Institute.
The other 8 justices currently serving on the Supreme Court are as follows: Justice John Paul Stevens, who is considered one of the minority liberals; Justice Sandra Day O'Connor, who, despite being the first woman to become a Supreme Court justice, has had a history of being conservative; Justice Antonin Scalia, one of the more conservative conservatives; Justice Anthony Kennedy, who is no relation to Robert, Teddy, or John; Justice David Souter, another one of the minority liberals; Justice Clarence Thomas, whose sex abuse scandal brought up by Anita Hill made his confirmation the closest ever, and who was appointed to take over for the well-respected and much-missed Justice Thurgood Marshall, the first African-American to serve on this panel; Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who became the second woman to serve on the Supreme Court and who was also a liberal; and Justice Stephen Breyer, who was the last of the Supreme Court justices and was confirmed in 1994.
There is speculation that some of the Supreme Court justices will retire while George W. Bush is in Oval Office. Chief Justice Rehnquist, Justice Stevens, Justice O'Connor, and Justice Ginsburg have been speculated as wanting to leave during President Bush's last term, either for health reasons or because they would like to be replaced by a Republican, and they get a much better shot at it when one is currently in office.
Did you know that the Supreme Court justices, of which there are 9, are appointed for life?
Yes, I did.
What do you think about that? Because so many other things, they have the whole process of election and re-election is one of those things that kind of makes sure that somebody, has to perform well in the public eye. Now, Supreme Court justices can be removed from office if they don't adhere to their code of conduct. But how do you feel about that, the fact that they're appointed, for as long as they want to be, basically?
Well, I think that there could be a better system of checks in the Supreme Court, and that I think that there should be a better.
What's happening right now basically is, it's been a long time, and frankly I don't even know when the last time somebody actually got removed from office on the Supreme Court was. But what happens now generally is that if one wants to be replaced by either a Republican or a Democrat, they try to wait to retire until one is in the office, and that's kind of how they keep a hold of their seats. So what's your opinion about that kind of strategy?
Well, I guess it seems a little unfair that they choose to retire at that time.
It almost seems like a monopoly, doesn't it?
Sure, yeah.
SoundBite was written and produced by Christy and I and Laura Bynum. Music by Kevin Elliott.